stuff you need to be able to do recovery. You're going to need a recovery machine, recovery tank, a scale, some way to get power, a way to label your tank, and hoses. For the hoses, you're going to want at least 3/8 inner diameter. And so the first thing we're going to do is get power for our recovery machine. Almost every recovery machine is 120 volts. So this is a really important step. I'm just going to zip tie this here so it doesn't, it's not able to move so much. So in general, you would want to hook up between a hot leg and ground to try to get 120. The issue is sometimes you have what's called a wild leg, which even if you're like a normal hot to 120 should be 120 volts, which is what you want. But a wild leg, you'll hook up to a hot wild leg and then you'll go to ground, and instead of 120 you're going to get like 230 or 240. That'll fry your machine pretty dang quick. So what you want to do is you want to hook up your little white neutral connection to your ground. Make sure you got a good connection to ground, and then your black will go to your hot that you think is a normal 240 volt hot instead of a wild leg. And the way you can confirm that is you just get your meter. That's why you need a meter for this. This is the only thing I need it for. You put it in volts, and then you'll put one probe in one of the slots and the other probe in the other. Make sure you don't got over 120 volts. If you got over 120 volts, that's probably a wild leg. You're gonna have to find another hot, or worst case scenario, run an extension cord into the building. So we got 120 volts here. I zip tied it so it doesn't disconnect easily. I'm gonna put it around the other side. I don't have a tag, so I'm just using painter's tape. Then our scale is on. We're going to zero our scale. Then we're going to take our tank, put it on your scale. We're going to record that tare weight. That's 18.8 pounds. So I'm going to put TW. 18. The shorter hoses, the better. I think this is my shorter hose. The bigger hoses are better as well. So I'll put this one in the suction line. Better if you can keep your hoses attached to something so you don't get stuff in it. Because then if you get in the hoses, you're just going to end up in your system like the recovery tank. That's no bueno. Alright. Whoop, almost fell. So, let's see here. What we're probably going to do is move our tank and scale. Oh, one thing is, your tank, you want to do an evacuation on it. This is the second time we record this, so I had already pulled the micron gauge off, but you want to put at least one core removal tool on there so you can evacuate, have your micron gauge on the side port of your tool, pull it down to a nice low micron level. I pulled it down to 50, then you close off the vacuum pump side, disconnect your pump, you start a decay test while you get all your stuff up on the roof. By the time you get up on the roof, 15 minutes will have passed, and so you should be below 1,000 microns for sure. We just did it 30 minutes later. We were, I think, what were we below? It was pretty dang low. It started at 50, it went up to like 200 or something. So we were good. The important part is when you do it like that, you have to keep whatever whatever valve you opened up to do the evacuation, you have to keep that all the way open, because if you close it, you're going to let air in through the packing of that valve. This valve is in good shape, but sometimes you get really messed up valves that'll leak like a sieve. Keep that valve open and control the valve instead of from the handle. Control it from your core removal. You can close the side that went to your micron gauge, remove the micron gauge, and then of course this is already closed when you remove the pump. So now when I add refrigerant, I'm just going to open this port instead of worrying about that. So move this over. So this machine, a lot of the times it's better if you just use a regular 1/4-inch filter dryer and then a Y where it goes to 2 3/8 ports. I've got a funky setup, so my Y is kind of integrated already. The main thing is that your filter dryer not be exposed to air. The way I'm doing that in this case is that I ran nitrogen when I hooked it up, and then I closed off this ball valve. So these ports can be opened up without exposing my filter dryer to any moisture. In your case, you might just pull the little rubber caps off and just put it on immediately. That's good enough too. So then we're going to hook up our hoses to the filter dryer, the suction side of your cover. Okay. So if you've got a smaller hose, use it. I'm going to use it on the liquid line in this case. I'm going to come over to that smaller port. And that's going to be for pulling the liquid out of the receiver. And then my bigger port is going to be for the suction side of the system. You need that bigger hose. Here's another thing that I just now realized. Oh no, I do have more core removal. One thing that's really useful is having too many core removal tools. These are really handy because you can use them to remove cores, but you can just use them as regular ball valves for everything. A nice big port. So this system has both configurations, so it makes it really good. If you can come over here so we can see into the system. So I'm going to start with the regular, this is a regular service port. I'm going to tie into that for my recovery, but you don't want to have a core tool in the way. All of my hoses, and in general, all the hoses on a recovery should have 0 depressors in them, as well as 0 cores in your system. So you put your core removal tool on there, you press on your plunger, you unscrew, you unscrew that to pull that core out of that port. Once you start feeling it click, it's because you got it all the way out. Keep spinning it as you relieve pressure and it'll pop its way out. You can close the valve on your core tool now, and you should have your core, if you've got any luck, on the end of your grabber there. So now that restriction is out of the way. This is just an open port now. Now the other scenario that you might have is one of these service valves. These service valves make it to where you don't have to pull the core, you just got to mess with these stems here to be able to expose or not expose refrigerant pressure. So I don't have my service wrench right now, so I'm going to use some pliers. If you're going to use pliers, go ahead and try to get some smooth jaw pliers to not mess it up like this is all messed up. But first I'm going to make sure that this is all the way back seated to make sure I can take off this little port cover that they have on here. It's like an old hose or something. So I'm trying to just in case this is tighter than I think. I have power off to the system right now too. In general, that's a good practice when you're doing recovery. So looks like we are all the way back seated. I'm going to front seat to make sure. Yep. Go ahead, back seat again. I can remove this with some certainty that we're not going to let out a whole bunch of refrigerant. going to want to recover, if you only got 2 hoses like me, you're going to want to put one on the suction line and another one on the liquid line, closest to the biggest amount of liquid that you've got. So here, this is the receiver. This should have most of the liquid in the system. The other benefit is that this port is going to the filter dryer, meaning this is the king valve. You're going to want to put it on this one because this one's got a dip tube that goes to the bottom and slurps up the liquid first, so you don't have to pull it off all as a gas. The other valve on the receiver is called the queen valve. You want to leave that alone for recovery at least. So we pulled that cover off. Now we can go ahead and take our smaller hose. See if I can make it reach. Yeah. And we're going to want to put that on our port here. And I have this completely back-seated, so it's actually not letting any refrigerant pressure through. Then we're going to get our suction hose, attach it to our suction core removal tool, and we're going to start purging, or at least start thinking about purging. So now we're kind of hooked up. We haven't purged, we haven't opened up any refrigerant valve. This is how we're setting it up right now. The hose is tight on the recovery machine, loose on the recovery cylinder. We're going to purge all the way up to that limit. And the first thing, you're going to want to purge with gas if you can. So this hose is going to be tight here, and it's going to be tight here. Everything's tight except for the port on the recovery cylinder and the port on my king valve, the receiver. So we're going to purge out of those 2. The first one we want to purge out is of my king valve. I'm going to keep this ball valve closed, and I'm going to open my gas. And the gas is going to come in the suction hose. This is closed. It's going to back around this smaller hose, and you're just purging gas until you get all the air out of your hose. At that point, the inlet side is purged. No more air. And now we leave that gas valve open, and I can connect my system to my filter dryer by opening this ball valve. And purging this machine is a little bit more of a pain, but I just spin this valve as I hear gas coming out of the discharge hose of the recovery machine. What's happening is we're getting gas coming in, because now both of these don't have air. So only refrigerant is coming through the filter dryer into the suction of my recovery machine, through my compressors, through the condenser, and then out of the hose, and we're purging all of that of air. So this is going to take the longest. I do this for a good minute before I'm satisfied that I have all the air out of this little assembly. Once I've got all the air out, I'll tighten my last port, and so all of your hoses should be on tight. Now we can finally break the vacuum of our recovery tank. So I'm just gonna open that up and literally stop. We're gonna quit once you stop hearing refrigerant flow, because at that point there's probably not positive pressure in that thing. You can even hook up you know what? Let's just do that. Safer way, because realistically your recovery machine a lot of the time will have a suction dial, and if you have it in the open position on both the suction vapor, it'll tell you the suction pressure. Here it says it's like 60 psi, but just to make sure I don't have a vacuum on my tank, this valve is closed on this core removal tool. I'm going to hook up my probe here, and then I'm going to close off the valve going to the recovery machine, and I'm going to check pressure. And right now I've got 32 psi. You can't see it, but I can confirm this valve is closed, this valve is open. We've got 32 psi on our tank. We don't need all this extra stuff anymore. Now we can close this, ensuring that we're not getting any air into the tank, and we can actually close our recovery machine and pull the core removal tool out of the circuit. You can leave it in the circuit, but it's just more likely to break the core removal tool. So I'd rather pull it out. Put that back on, open the valve, so it'll purge any little bit of air out of that hose, and now we don't have to mess with all of this stuff. So now we can open this up all the way. Get rid of these couple of things. Get our tank on the scale. When you turn the tank over, turn it to where it tightens this fitting. If I turn it this way, it tightens that fitting. If I turn it this right here and I turn it this way, it loosens the fitting and you end up having a loose connection. So turn it, imagine that you're trying to tighten the fitting with the bottom. So now it's upside down. We're on the gas side because that doesn't have the restriction of the dip tube. And then we're at that 18.33, I think it was 18.8 that we measured before. As long as it's within half a pound, you're good. So I'm gonna zero out my scale. When you're recovering, you wanna start recovering with liquid. So I'm gonna close my gas valve off and I'm gonna open up my liquid valve. Remember, all of this is purged, so I can just open this right up. That's gonna let the liquid into our machine, so it's actually gonna not have to do so much work. Ideally, you start with the system running, but the system not running is more general case, so we're gonna do it like that. So I'm setting this to fast recovery. It's gonna let the refrigerant through. We're at 1 pound right now. I'm gonna let it kind of equalize a little bit, because if you run your machine, you got liquid going into it, it's just a little rougher on your machine, so you want to minimize the amount of liquid pumping that it needs to do. Put that cap back on. So now it kind of quit moving around, so I'm going to start up the machine. And you might want to start slow. Most machines have a dial that controls the flow. I know that there's liquid in that receiver, so you don't want to start at the full flow. It says fast up here, slow on the side. I'm actually going to start it slower, closer to slow, and I'm going to open it up until it starts making weird noises. So I'm going to start it at slow. That sounds great. I'm going to keep going. And we actually sound fine. What you'll hear is a knock. If it's getting slugged, you'll hear it knocking on your machine, and you want to tamp it down. You want to restrict it slightly on the, because this is restricting it on the suction side. So it'll stop it from being slugged so badly. But if you're not getting any knocking, you can go all the way to maximum speed, and that's going to speed up your recovery. Normally you'll have a suction gauge and a discharge gauge. That's the basic stuff. And then watch your scale. So the app I use is HVAC School. I'm just going to download it right now. Has a tool in there. You can enter your water capacity, in this case it's 26 pounds. Then you can enter your air weight, and you can enter the refrigerant type, as well as the temperature you're going to keep it in. Normally you want to keep that at like 100 degrees, I think. That'll give you the safe amount of charge that you can put into the tank without overfilling it, causing it to burst the disc or leak or explode in the worst case scenario. So you really do want to do it, and like I said, there's no huge hurry. It's better if you do it while you're doing the evacuation, but as long as you do it before you start getting close to that water capacity, you're going to be alright. There we go, it's downloaded. So we go to tools. Go to recovery tank fill. You go to tear weight. So that was 18.8. Water capacity is 26 pounds. Max temperature, I just leave that at the default, 130 degrees. Our refrigerant is R404. There it is. Done. And then you calculate, and then it will give you the total weight, which is called gross weight, will be 36 pounds whenever it's full. The refrigerant weight will be 17.72. So we can't charge this more full than 17.7 before we start running into issues. Not issues, but it just becomes less safe. We're at 3 pounds though, so we don't, it looks like we probably had a pretty good sized leak on the system. So yeah, you want to keep it under that 17 pounds. Once you start getting close to that, you'll have to do a disconnect procedure and move on to another recovery tank. If you know that it's going to be more than a single tank from the beginning, you can actually put them in tandem. You can't really use a scale as easily, but as long as you get enough tanks to where your total fill is well below your capacity, you can connect them all in tandem and just leave it to recover, at least somewhat, so where you can actually do other things instead of keeping an eye on it like the hawk. So the other thing is, we started recovering on that liquid on the receiver, right? Our scale has stopped going up. I don't need a sight glass to tell me that we're not moving in the liquid anymore. Our scale has we're going up by 1/10 of a pound. So at this point, I know that we've got most of the liquid out of that receiver. All I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my suction hose now. Now it's gonna be doing its job because we're starting a gas recovery on the high side of the system. So now we gotta start a gas recovery on the low side as well. We open that up and you can hear that it started flowing. The reason was that the evaporator is actually downstairs and the evaporator is colder than it is on the roof. So any refrigerant would migrate down rather than being on the roof because the solenoid is actually open right now. So at that point, you just let it recover until you're done. And even then, this system is badly underweight. We're at like 4 pounds. I wouldn't be surprised if this system held at least like 15 pounds. So yeah, we lost a lot of charge. But yeah, that's how you do a recovery.